Usually I feel pretty prepared about interviews that I'm about to begin in, but this is one of those that I gotta tell you, I wrestled with greatly. Cried a little, mourned a lot, but I'm excited to be joined this afternoon with Senator Doug Jones and Miss Barbara Cross. Um, Good afternoon to both of you.
Good afternoon.
We're here to talk about that dreadful day, September 15th, 1963. It's forever etched in my mind anyway, and I'm sure in yours, Miss Cross. Your dad was the pastor of the 16th Street Baptist Church at the time.
Correct.
What do you remember about that day?
Okay. That day started off like a beautiful Sunday morning because this was the first day that my father had initiated since he became pastor June of 1962 as Youth Sunday. So we were so excited as teenagers and youth and preteens we were supposed to be front and center in the worship service.
Yeah.
However, that service never happened. So going to Sunday school, I remember studying the lesson about a love that forgives. And we gave examples that people might steal your lunch or do something, but we talked about the agape love, the type of godly love that you wouldn't fight. You would try to, pretty much, they were giving us strategies how to handle conflict resolution. But at that time, I didn't put it in that words
So it was a
like
pretty
that.
regular Sunday. That's what was so bizarre about what ended up happening. So a pretty regular Sunday morning. Your dad, who was, as a pastor myself, being a pastor's kid, you're just going about normal business, and then unfortunately, the bomb goes off. And you've written this great book, Senator, called Bending Toward Justice. I got to ask you, why did you decide to write it?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. Initially, part of this story I think just needed to be told. I think
Yeah.
Barbara would agree that a lot of this history is just not taught the way it should.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go back and have and relive what was going on in Birmingham that led up to this bombing and why this church had been targeted, why potentially the children who were going to be meeting again were targeted for this bombing, and to tell the story, and then also tell the story of how those cases came together,
Yeah.
that we could successfully prosecute and bring a sense of healing to Birmingham and I think Alabama and the South.
Did you, when you were writing it, did it take you back to some times where, because I gotta tell you, when I was reading it, I mean, I got very emotional during
Sure.
times of it. Did you have those moments?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you cannot handle a case. Now, my emotion was dealing with Barbara and dealing with the families and just
Yeah.
dealing with, I still get that way. I mean, I got emotional writing the book. I get emotional speaking about it sometimes. This was something in American history that really touches people once they get to know the full story. And then it touches you, I think, even more to know that in our case, 37 and 30 years after the fact, that we will be able to bring justice to the case and prosecute two people, Tommy Blanton and Bobby Frank Cherry, for murdering those four girls.
You say in the book, it's really interesting here. I can't recall what I was doing September 15th, 1963. You go on to say, I don't really remember when I heard the news the 16th Street Baptist Church had been bombed. So, why did this day change so much of history? Um, what happened on this day that people said, this is not right?
Well, I believe that things had started to move. I think the Birmingham Children's Crusade, the fire hoses and the dogs had started this movement, accelerated things.
Yeah.
But here, there has been a lot of bombings. There had been deaths. But this was a bomb that exploded in a house of God
Yeah.
on a Sunday morning it was a place where people should have felt their safest.
Yeah.
And at that point, I think folks just recognized that Jim Crow's got to go. And it woke the conscience of America, really, and speeded it up. It woke the conscience of a Congress as well as a president of the United States.
Ms. Cross, tell us about your dad. Senator Jones talks so eloquently about him here in the book, and it's amazing that I've read a lot of books about it, but never really heard his side of it as a father. You live in this home, even to this day. You obviously are still very emotional by it. Tell us about your dad.
My dad was a loving and compassionate person. I remember when we left Richmond going to Virginia,
Yeah.
I was excited about moving. My other siblings, I loved them, they must had a lot of friends because I was like, I wanted to experience like I love people like my dad,
Yeah.
and so he was so compassionate, so loving, and he always was a positive person.
Yeah.
And he enjoyed uh, being a pastor of 16th Street because he came from a small church in rural part of Richmond, in Chesterfield, Virginia, where he pastored. And in fact, back then he had to work several jobs. He was used to help pass things to a surgeon who was a heart surgeon. So this was supposed to have been a great move for our family. And when I look back on it, if I had to do it all over again, I think I would, even knowing that the bombing would happen, because
Hmm.
it makes you resilient.
Really? Huh.
And so when kids say, Miss Cross, do you hate the people that bomb your church? I said, we weren't taught to hate. I can help separate what happened from hating the person.
Yeah.
So even after the church was bombed and I suffered, I guess, later from post-traumatic stress disorder, and I realized when I went off to college, I was afraid of loud noises. But I thank God that our parents shielded us because we would have been afraid to go to church. They never did tell us about the bombings. I thought about it, and it sounds crazy now. I was reading about Cuban Missile Crisis in
And you thought
1962.
that was happening
I
that
did because
morning.
when we didn't have fire drills when in school in
Yeah.
Alabama. We had to go in the hallway, put our heads down, and prepare to cover our heads.
And you're thinking
So when
that.
I heard the noise and felt the building, felt like the building was swaying, I was hit in the head, and I recognized later it was part of the light fixture.
Wow.
But my teacher literally spared my life. I was given an assignment that kept me from going to the bathroom. And sometimes
Hmm.
Sarah disputes my story, but she was traumatic. We still speak to this day. But I was writing down the names of those who would be moving up in Sunday school. I gave Ad in my wallet, said, see you in a little while. So after they went through the church and my wallet was in there, that's the only thing I could think about. She had my wallet.
And I think what I think of for the most part of this day was just courage. I mean, your dad, as a pastor of the church, takes the bullhorn, goes outside, and for the most part says, "Calm, we got
Quoting
it.
the Lord is my shepherd.
Lord's
That's
my
what I
shepherd,"
heard that he
which
said.
is just phenomenal. And Senator, for you, when I'm reading the book, I think of courage because here you are in Alabama. I got family from Alabama. Um, where did the courage come from to want to try this case?
Well, let me first say any courage that people think I may have pales in comparison to the courage of people like John Cross
Hmm.
in Birmingham. Not only that day, but
Wow.
allowing that church to be the place for mass meetings and to be the focal point for the civil rights. And he knew that it was going to put a target on the church, and to get that bullhorn and to preach the love that forgives, the Sunday school lesson that kept that down, and to go into that ladies' lounge that morning. So I've never considered myself to be
Really?
very courageous, and
Huh.
I didn't with this case. I didn't with the Senate race. I mean, that was just something I believe that we needed to do. That there needed to be a voice out there
Yeah.
that I think Alabama hadn't had in a long time, and we stayed true to that voice. And we were very fortunate that it turned out real well for us. But it hadn't, we were still going to have that same attitude. And I think that that's the way we approach these cases. Stick with that process, stick with the way it goes, and good things happen.
Um, the girls' names: Denise McNair, Addie Mae Collins, Carol Robertson, Cynthia Wesley. What did these names do to you when you were trying the case?
Oh,
Senator?
every time you couldn't hardly speak those names without getting emotional. I mean, when I was another reason I wanted to write this book was to talk about the first case in 1977 where Robert Chambliss,
Yeah.
kind of the ringleader of all this, was tried. And as a second-year law student, I cut classes and went and watched that trial, never dreaming
Never
that
thinking you'd be doing the
24
case.
years
Yeah.
later, I would not only be doing the case, I'd be doing it in the same courtroom where I sat as a kid.
Unreal.
And the families meant so much, and every time you talk about those children, and their names are not mentioned enough. And Sarah, you mentioned Sarah earlier, she was the survivor. Her name is not mentioned enough.
Yeah.
These were sacrificial lambs, and Dr. King spoke about them so eloquently in the eulogy for these girls and when he preached the funeral.
A couple more questions. Why do you think the two guys who are part of it, obviously, part of the bombing, why they never confess, you think, Senator?
Well, I think there's a combination of things. I think one is they knew that the justice system would put them in prison for a long,
Yeah.
long time, and they would likely die in prison like Robert Chambliss did. I think over the passage of time, they somehow, in their own mind, get to thinking that whatever they did, that they really weren't guilty of this. And I think part of it too is that no one really would ever want to admit the murder of children, like
Yeah.
this innocent children. I think it was the combination. And I met with them before I indicted them, gave them an opportunity. They didn't take it. I have met with Tommy Blanton now 3 times since he was convicted. Never ever has he ever expressed any remorse or acceptance of responsibility for his actions.
You know, I love, I saw you in another interview where you said they have cold ice in their veins.
Oh yeah, there's no question.
And I would
Yeah.
agree with
I don't
that.
think they have a heart either. Whatever it is
Yeah.
pumped by something other than a heart.
You know, I love this last part here. Reverend Cross felt it an appropriate time to focus his young flock on matters of the soul and spirit after the especially tumultuous spring and summer. Once again, I love what you say about Reverend Cross in this story here. What would your dad think of all of this? I know he's passed away. What would he say today, you think?
I believe my father would say he wouldn't have done it any differently
Yeah,
I agree. I agree with that.
it's a good word.
Yeah.
because he knew that Dr. King was trying to make a difference. And sometimes in life, and thank you, Doug, for what you shared, there has to be a sacrificial lamb. And those girls were innocent angels of change. If you look at the document, I think they showed it, unassuming. And so when I go back to 16th Street now, they usually have them on each corner with the 4 girls. And it's a reminder of the price they paid. And they're looking down over us. And we got to continue to run this race about a love that forgives. Despite whatever people do, the hatreds in their heart, they'll have to reap what they sow. But long as we are doing the right thing, and Doug Jones and other people who are taking on cases like this, and I'm sure that had to be hard because he remembered. I'm sure you probably looked at those pictures and looked at all the time. So we just know that they made a difference as sacrifices, because I said earlier to someone, if they had been adults, they wouldn't have felt the compassion.
I think yeah.
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
something about innocent children
change America.
worshiping in a church and studying about the agape love
Change America.
changed America.
I would agree. Senator, I hate to ask you this last question because it's such an eloquent book. Did you say everything you wanted to say in the book?
Oh gosh, no. I mean, I don't know if you could ever say all that you want to say. I mean, I have, and Barbara knows this. I've been speaking about these cases all over the country for the last 15, 16 years. And it's generally consistent, but there's always something new that pops out. And as we change, there are more lessons, I think, to be learned from that. And that is, going back to why now I think this book is especially relevant, given the amount of hate we see on the internet and social media,
rise.
given the amount that our politicians and public officials tend to kind of stoke that, just like George Wallace and Bull Connor did. There's some serious lessons, I think, to be learned from that. So I'll still have a fair amount to say, not only about the nuances of the case, but also about the meaning of what we've got.
Volume 2 coming.
Oh, I don't know about volume 2. I got a day job.
Never ask an author about volume 2. Volume 1 is just done. No, but I hope volume 2 does come. Thank you both.
Thank you.
I got to tell you, I've been excited about this day for the last week or more, and I just want to thank you both for your time this
Thank you.
afternoon.
Thank you very
Thank
kind.
you.
And
Thanks.
I'm honored to sit down with Senator Doug Jones, who put the nail in the coffin on the last 2 trials. God bless
He
you.
really did. Thank you.
Thank you.